Nicola Sturgeon threatens to close the Scottish border, Angela Merkel to impose a new tax on Europe, and Owen Jones has a meltdown over Boris returning to work. Right, the SNP government are at it again. Nicola Sturgeon, the dear leader, who's so competent and so good that she can't even run her own Scottish government, is now warning Boris Johnson that she would put up a border between Scotland and England. I mean, that's not her wording. Her wording was that she would close the border. What border? There's no border to open or close. So yeah, we're going to talk about this, but also Angela Merkel is once again showing that she's the one actually running Europe and the whole European Union. So she's the main puppet master behind everything. So she wants to now impose a new tax onto European citizens. So let's start with Nicola Sturgeon first. So Nicola Sturgeon has now said that she could close the borders if the UK government in Westminster decide to end the lockdown sooner than expected. And she said that on this question of will Scotland do things differently, not for the sake of it, we won't, only if the evidence and our judgment tells us that is necessary. That means if, it is an if. I'm not saying that we are likely to get into this territory. If the UK government took decisions that I thought were premature in terms of coming out of the lockdown, then clearly I would want to make sure that Scotland did what I judged was best to protect their population. I mean, firstly, let's talk about her judgment. Not only with this current problem, but previously with everything else that goes around in Scotland. Her government is absolutely incompetent, whether it's education or health, and absolutely on this issue as well. They've messed up previously over the last month or so. So I don't understand why she wants to separate her powers from Westminster. Why? She said that the virus doesn't respect borders or boundaries and people travel freely across different parts of the UK, and that's why I think it has been important, as well as for the simplicity of messages, to have as much consistency across the UK as possible, and I think that's still the starting point. Right. I mean, she just said it's best to be consistent across the board when it comes to the United Kingdom, and she's right. The whole country, the whole government should be consistent. They should be united. Whatever policy we decide, we don't have a federal state. We don't have like various states to be independent and make their own decisions. It doesn't work that way in the UK. So just listen to Westminster. Whatever the Westminster government decides should apply to the rest of the UK. Simple. Now, even the National, the newspaper, is talking about how Nicola Sturgeon is saying that closing borders should be up for discussion. Okay, so let's talk about the SNP government being competent enough to do things on their own. Well, earlier this month we discovered that the SNP government were giving out the wrong figures in terms of people losing their lives, and they had to actually introduce a new system and make a U-turn and apologize, saying, oh, actually, we weren't really giving out the right figures. But that's not the first time. Again, we remember when Nicola Sturgeon was giving out false crime figures a while ago. She was accused of misleading the public after claiming that crime in Scotland is at its historic low, and in reality that wasn't true. Again, back in 2015, Nicola Sturgeon admitted that the Independence oil figures were wrong. She had to basically concede, saying that the Scottish government overestimated oil revenues during the referendum after the Telegraph reports that they were up to 13 times as much as the latest official projections. So we're supposed to be trusting this Nicola Sturgeon and this administration to get things right. Yeah, I personally don't. For the sake of the Scottish people, no. Now, speaking of crazy leaders, that's another one. In the words of Donald Trump, that's another beauty. Angela Merkel is coming out to use her new presidency of the European Council that starts in July to impose a new tax on Europeans, because why not? We've got nothing else to do. You know, people are just chilling at home, losing money on a daily basis. So it's probably good for the European Union to make more money, right? Yeah, so she's now seeking to impose a new financial transaction tax on EU countries. As if things weren't bad enough for businesses and individuals across Europe, she now wants to take more money from them and give it to Brussels. Yeah, so this is because as of July, she's going to be going to take the presidency role of the European Council. And so this allows individual countries to set the EU's agenda during the 6 months of their stint. Now, the funny thing is, she's now said that it will be clearly dominated by the issue of combating the pandemic and its consequences. At the same time, she's also planning to impose a new EU-wide healthcare system for across Europe, a new healthcare system for 27 countries and a minimum tax rate. Really? I mean, talk about harmonizing. This is at a whole new level. Now, the funny thing is she's now using this presidency of the council, which starts in July, as an opportunity to do this. But in reality, we've always known that it's always been Angela Merkel and Germany that's been deciding the main policies for Europe. They're the ones that actually runs the whole game. But now, they can openly and publicly say, we have new policies, guys. Listen to us, because she has that role in a couple of months. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so the head of research at the Adam Smith Institute, Matthew Lesh, said that we have rightly thrown our economy into the ICU to protect lives. The last thing we should do is strangle the patient before they have time to recover. These proposals would actively discourage everything we now need: a thriving economy in which companies employ and transact. A financial transaction tax that undermines the business activity we now need would be disastrous. And Victoria Hewson, the head of the regulatory affairs at the Institute for Economic Affairs, said that the proposals underline the importance for the UK to have regulatory autonomy from the EU. A financial transaction tax has been on the EU agenda for a while. The UK and some other member states strongly resisted it, but there was always a risk that the UK could be outvoted under qualified majority voting and be forced to implement it. Without a tax applying to transactions in the City of London, it is unclear how much revenue such a tax would raise in the EU, especially if it encourages more businesses to move out of the EU, which would clearly be seriously counterproductive to any post-recovery. I mean, they're absolutely right. This whole policy is nonsense. It makes absolutely no sense because it's counterproductive, especially at this time when you need to grow the economies across Europe. And also, she now wants to introduce an EU-wide healthcare system. What? But in other news, Boris Johnson today returned to work, and the majority of people are, happy about it. They're behind the Prime Minister, even if they disagree with some of the policies. This guy, Owen Jones, the Guardian columnist and the left-wing activist, is having a meltdown on Twitter about this. So yeah, Boris made a speech today, and Owen Jones tweeted about it, saying, "When Boris Johnson declares that we have defied so many predictions, he's talking nonsense. Britain is one of the worst hit countries on earth. Over 40,000 people have so far likely died, many thousands of them needlessly because of the catastrophic decisions he's responsible for. The British government pursued a policy of herd immunity." No, they haven't. That's Sweden. If we had gone with that policy, it would have been a whole different situation. And he says in which it intended to let the virus rip through the population. Again, that's not how it works. It failed on testing. It failed on PPE. Again, that's not really the UK's fault because all the countries are having the same problem. It continues to let care homes be that's not my biggest problem with Owen Jones, is that he just starts ranting without actually doing his research properly. He also said that Boris Johnson has also managed to manipulate most of the media with his plea for people to control their impatience. Who? Polls show no public impatience with the lockdown. He means Tory donors and MPs. And now he's presented by the media as a hardliner. Right. So that's, again, where's the evidence for this? We have absolutely no proof. History can't be airbrushed or revised. We had ample time to avoid Italy's fate and instead be more like Germany. Okay, so this is interesting. So yeah, he went on, and the last tweet was actually quite interesting. He's now attacking all the other journalists, saying the good ones. He's saying, how's that for speaking truth to power? Yeah, because Matt Chorley tweeted, really striking thing is the Prime Minister looks properly rested in a way that he hasn't for months. Speech was classic Boris, upbeat mood, clear and serious message. Dan Hodges said, very strong statement, mature, honest, not self-indulgent, only passing reference to his own hospitalization. Yeah, so the journalists and the commentators that, you know, speak sense and are normal are too much for Owen Jones. You know, how dare they? So yeah, Owen is not too happy about this, and it's kind of funny. But his one of his idols and heroes, Jeremy Corbyn, who has been rebelling against this whole the social distancing stuff, and he's been repeatedly coming into Parliament instead of staying at home. He's over 70, and he should have just stayed at home, obviously. Now we have a video that just got leaked in one of his recent video conference calls with the other Labour members, and in the video he doesn't look too good because he's coughing
outside of hospital as well. We don't know what those numbers will be, although some stories have. We called for the lockdown. I mean, we don't think a lockdown's a helpful phrase, but for the purposes of this, I think we all know what we're saying. We called for the lockdown ahead of the government announcing it last week.
Talking to supermarket managers in my own area, but the issues of food supply further down the line are obviously the government has, excuse me, has got to step up to the plate on that, make sure the necessary workers get in to this country in order to do the work, or people are recruiting to do it, obviously working in a safe environment. So we're absolutely on that the whole time. The role of the party in all this, excuse me, I haven't got CV, it's just I dried biscuit during the call earlier. Big thank you to all the party members for doing that.
This is exactly the whole point. You know, if you don't listen to the advice, this happens. And, you know, even if he doesn't have it yet, he could be vulnerable to it. So stop trying to be cool, Jeremy. Like, just stop it. Just stay at home. But going back to the Boris Johnson's government, they're doing something really interesting for once. So we have the daily press briefings where the journalists, the lamestream media journalists ask questions. And they try to, every day, they try to come up with some gotcha questions and follow-up questions. So as of Saturday, the government decided to cancel the follow-up questions, so just one question per journalist. And as of today, they are becoming the people's government again, because they've decided to give up on lobby hacks and instead ask the public, the general public, to submit questions for these daily briefings. This is absolutely amazing. They're actually getting people directly involved with these press conferences. Yeah, so you can imagine the Westminster lobby are completely having a meltdown over this. They don't want people to ask real questions. They want them, and they're people to ask their own gotcha questions for their ratings. So yeah, so well done, Downing Street. Another 10 points for doing something cool. So this is what we have now. At 8 o'clock tonight, we have the second episode of Maya's Life, our daily vlog that I basically take you through my day, do my own stuff, and just talk about the political issues of the day. It's more of an informal format. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and click on that bell next to it so you get notified. We have our news show at 5:45 p.m. and the daily vlogs at 8 p.m. Again, I want to say massive thank you, as usual, to the members of this channel. It's because of you guys that I'm here. If you want to become a member and support us, then check out the link in the description, or just find the join button next to subscribe, or on your browser you can type in youtube.com/maya2c/join. And for the members of the channel, I just posted on the community page to submit your questions for tomorrow's Q&A. So make sure you check out the community page, submit your questions, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow in the 8 o'clock video. I'm Maya2c. I'll see you guys tomorrow with a new video.